welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide to to Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. I'm Nick Gorman. I'm one of your co-hosts and meme enthusiast.
I'm AJ Gorman. I still have no epitaph.
Well, you know, you're the one with all the tabs on the book.
Sure.
So today we're talking about Mistborn: The Final Empire, and we've already done a pre-read. We've already done our post-read where we just reviewed the book unto itself and talking about its place within the Mistborn series. But now we're going to focus on, so you've read the book, what are the implications for the broader Cosmere? Where are you going to see these things again?
I am super excited for this episode. I'm more excited for this episode than I have for the previous episodes. Is that weird?
No, it's great. I think, so what do you want to talk about?
Oh, there is so much. I have pages and pages of notes, and that's not even all of my notes.
So get going. What's the most exciting thing?
Well, first off, I want to take a step back and look at the larger picture of the Cosmere. So at the core of the Cosmere is Stormlight, right? At the very center, according to Brandon, is Stormlight, right? Which is 2 5-book arcs. And those books are monstrous. But those are the core of his Cosmere. But then Mistborn is also a pretty large spine, whatever. A pretty large part of the Cosmere as well. I would say that Mistborn takes a close second as in terms of importance of series that are of high importance in the Cosmere. So that's kind of I want to make sure that we're putting that in context, that Mistborn is important.
See, I always thought it was like there were like pillars, right? Where Stormlight is one pillar, Mistborn is another, and then you've got Elantris as another, and then a whole bunch of like one-offs, or not side stories per se, but you know, they don't have quite the there won't be a whole full series about things like Warbreaker. There's not going to be a sixth.
I don't think there's going to be a whole series about Elantris either.
He's got at least 2 sequels planned.
Does he?
Yeah. Read The State of the Sanderson.
Okay, well, it doesn't deal with the main characters of the first book. It's going to deal with Kaiin's children.
We don't know. We'll see when it comes out. So Mistborn.
Anyways, so Mistborn is pivotal. It's maybe not the most pivotal, but it's a very close second. So I just want to make sure that we're putting that in context. So with that in mind, I went through my paper copy of Final Empire, and while I was reading it, I had I flagged everything that I thought was potentially important, and I kind of had 5 categories. So I used yellow tags for Kelsier, anything relating to Kelsier. I used red flags for the Shard in World, and for this series, there's kind of 3 shards, depending on how you're counting things. You've got the Shard Ruin, the Shard Preservation, and then you've got Harmony and or Discord, which could be the same shard. We don't know. And then I use orange flags for other shards, or religions that may reference other shards. We'll talk more about that later if you have no clue what I'm talking about. Then I use green flags for other characters or general Cosmere, and then blue flags for just kind of things that talked about the in-world magic system. Now, I do want to preface and say I don't really want to get into the magic system today because, again, that is one episode in and of itself, and I don't want to talk about it today.
And which magic system anyway?
Yes, exactly. And I feel like maybe we should wait until after the second book to really dig into it, because after the second book,
so much more is clear.
So much more is clear. But anyways, so as I was saying, Mistborn is kind of a core of the Cosmere. This first book is actually pretty critically important to understanding what is going on in the larger Cosmere later on. And the main reason for that is Kelsier. Spoiler, Kelsier has died, but he's not gone.
He's only mostly dead.
Only mostly dead.
There's a difference between mostly dead and all dead.
Anyways, so this is the only book that we see Kelsier 100% alive, that we understand, his human side, human motivations, and everything that he was being a cognitive shadow.
Yeah. Well, I do think one of the things that's introduced, one of the concepts that's introduced in this book that we see again and again, is things that might or might not be Kelsier acting as if they are Kelsier and making big changes, right? So at the end of this book, you get the Oris or the Khandra, wearing Kelsier, having eaten Kelsier's bones, wearing Kelsier's skin, effectively, doing what Kelsier wanted, which is to stir up the Ska. At the end, throughout Hero of the Ages, the third book in the series, you see Ruin doing effectively the same thing, right? And then it's, I don't know, sort of debatable. I don't know if we can really say that cognitive shadows are the exact same thing as the person being alive, right? Or is it just like a copy?
I am still super unclear in my brain what a cognitive shadow is.
Well, we'll get there, but in Mistborn Era 2 and in Stormlight, later on, we start seeing influences of Kelsier's cognitive shadow, which might or might not be Kelsier, making big changes, making big impacts in the world and worlds, right?
Right. He is the leader of the Ghost Bloods.
Right.
Which their whole thing is just to save Scadrial, which is
Allegedly.
Well, I mean, it's still mind-boggling to me that because you have Ghost Bloods from other worlds. I'm like, why are people from other worlds signing up to save this other foreign world?
I mean,
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, it does make sense to me that you can have individual people with different motivations than the organization they're part of, right? Where the people who are members of the Ghost Bloods, might have their own agendas. They might be, they might just be lost adrift kind of deal, and they have a skill that would be useful for the Ghost Bloods. Sometimes it's just a job, right?
Yeah, but the small sect that we got to see in Mistborn Era 2 didn't seem like it was just a job to those people.
Well, yes, and I mean, but it's also like it's a home. Like they didn't have any place else to go, right? So it's not necessarily that they were dead set on, oh, we got to save Scadrial, but it's like, well, this is where they are. This is what they have to do to keep doing what they need to do.
Maybe. We'll have to explore that later.
Yeah. Well, and Kelsier's main, motto is survive, right? I mean, there's always another secret is the main motto, right? But
right.
He's the survivor. His imperative is to survive. And I think that attracts people who, what do they need to do? They need to survive.
I guess.
We'll
still have to figure out why they're calling them Ghost Bloods.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Brandon doesn't do anything on a whim.
No, but he definitely does some things just for style points.
Yes. Those stupid miscloaks that make absolutely no fucking sense. That's a style
I love him.
Anyway, so we've got Kelsier who's still influencing the Cosmere. So this is, kind of think of this as his origin story. So we want to pay attention to that. And then in the epigraphs, which we talked about last episode, you still have to pay pretty close attention to those, because every time you think you've figured out, oh, well, we know what the prophecy's about Hero of Ages, and the Hero of Ages is, spoiler, Sazed.
Right.
But if you go back through and you're paying attention to the epigraphs, they talk about the Hero of Ages, and they also mention Discord with a capital D. like as if discord, the shard,
Yeah. Well,
which could be is the flip side. Discord may be the flip side of harmony.
Well, one of my favorite fan theories before the Lost Metal came out. So the epigraph in chapter 8 is part of the Terrace prophecy, and I think part of the epigraph is his name shall be Discord, and they shall love him for it. One of my favorite fan theories was that wasn't actually talking about Sazed or the Hero of Ages, or that that was specifically referring to Dalinar, who if you think of people in the Cosmere and who are discordant, Dalinar, in his conquering of
Alethkar.
Of Alethkar, he was a force of strife, and he became acclaimed throughout Alethkar for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there's two different prophecies. Well, maybe not two different prophecies, but I think I don't think we know enough about this prophecy. We haven't seen like the full prophecy kind of written out that we know that is accurate.
Right.
Because
I'm just thinking about it's one of those tropes where the prophecies are so vague that they could apply to anybody, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's thought that applies to Alendi, then Rashek maybe, and then Sazed fits it most cleanly. But then, there's fan theories that, maybe it's also Dalinar, because he also, there's the world in his arms. Well, Dalinar, uses these big arm motions when he pulls the worlds together, right? So, I know Sazed holding the world in his arms is a reference to his copper mines and rebuilding civilization off of those.
Right.
But it's vague enough that it could be anybody.
Well, like I said, you still need to pay attention to these epigraphs because we keep finding out that we haven't quite figured them out, or they didn't mean what we thought they meant.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was interesting with the in chapter 24, Vin and Ham are talking about how Kelsier could have been as bad as the Lord Ruler, right? And in my mind, that's another way that they're foreshadowing, Thydakar, the leader of the Ghostbloods.
Thydakar is Kelsier.
Yeah, Thydakar is Kelsier. Well, Kelsier is cognitive shadow, which in my mind is not the same thing.
Which could be splitting hairs, could not be splitting hairs.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's one that's gonna get answered.
That's what as I was looking at all the stuff that I flagged, I noticed there was almost like, is double foreshadowing like a thing?
Yeah.
Because I think double foreshadowing, Brandon did that a couple times.
What do you mean?
So at the very beginning of the book, I'm going to read this quote. "Men who venture into the mist lose their souls," a woman whispered. Her words had raised a question. Had Kelsier walked into the mist? What then had happened to his soul? Which I feel like is one foreshadowing him leaving his bones to the Khandra to rise up again to inspire his own religion. But I think it is also foreshadowing him becoming a cognitive shadow, because cognitive shadow messes with your soul, right?
I mean, the way I understand it from where we're at so far with Stormlight, where we are with Stormlight is we've gotten through Rhythm of War, and there's cognitive shadows
Which
play
is book 4. Yep.
What's that?
Book 4.
Yeah, book 4, Rhythm of War. We understand a little bit more about the mechanics of different cognitive shadows, where some of them, like the heralds, and especially not the Parshendi, the singers, the ones who return, they are, the longer they're alive, the more trauma they go through, the more their soul gets corrupted and stretched thin, and they start to lose their minds, right?
Oh,
and then,
the heralds, yes.
Yes, the heralds, but also the Voidbringers.
Okay.
Right? And you see it where, and it manifests in different ways for them, where sometimes it's the more times that they die and come back, the more likely their minds are to break. But it seems like they kind of, start to go insane a little bit more, gradually than that. But
Okay.
then you also see in, what is it? On the other hand, you see the Returned in Warbreaker, where there's Vasher, and in particular Vasher, who's been around for, eons and eons.
Is he a cognitive shadow?
Returns are cognitive shadows.
Oh, right. Right.
And he seems to be relatively intact, but I don't know if that's because of the strength of his personality, or if that's because he is mostly on the run, and he's not throwing himself into war in conflict like the heralds are. I don't know.
He seems pretty wary.
Yeah, but also weary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, at the beginning of the book, Brandon had a line in there saying, "Some say that the real Kelsier is dead, and that the thing wearing his face is something else."
Oh, I like that. I didn't think about that.
And that was before. This was at the beginning of the book.
Yeah. So they're talking about where he died in
the pits. Yeah.
And that's like the same thing where he dies. He dies for real, facing Lord Ruler. Something else wears his face at the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe something else wears his face at the end. Throughout book 3, and then maybe he's wearing his face. Maybe he's wearing somebody else's face.
There's layers upon layers.
It's layers upon layers. There's a theme that keeps coming up through the Cosmere.
Right, which is why I'm just like, is double foreshadowing a thing? Because this just keeps coming back.
Well, it's foreshadowing, but it's also a recurring theme.
Yeah, maybe that's just it. I think we should also talk about what we learn about Kelsier's motivation, which, to be honest, I don't know if human Kelsier has the same emotions as cognitive shadow Kelsier. So we know in this first book that he's going after the Lord Ruler as revenge for Mare.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it starts. Perhaps, depending on how you're reading the story, you feel like maybe he switched to actually caring about the Ska. Maybe not.
Well, right, because it kind of doesn't make sense for him to set himself up as a martyr if he's not, to not really revenge Mare, right?
Well, I think he knew that he himself as an individual wasn't going to be able to defeat the Lord Ruler.
So he needed the Ska to do it.
He needed the Ska to rise up.
Okay.
So it could be that he cared about them, or he just really needed them to rise up to take care of the Lord Ruler because he knew he couldn't do it.
That's fair.
So I think there's room for interpretation there. But there is one line in here that I thought just kind of really sums up Kelsier. And this is something that he says.
There's always another secret?
No.
Ah.
But being an annoyance is something I am very good at. In fact, I'm far more than a mild annoyance. People tell me I can be downright frustrating. Might as well use this talent for the cause of good, eh?
Certainly what he thinks of is good, though, yeah.
What he thinks is good, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what he thinks is good is killing all the noblemen.
Except Ellen would kind of add a character for him, though.
Eland,
whatever.
Yeah, I say Eland. But yeah, I think that just sums him up to a T. Another quote that really kind of pegs him is something else that he says to Sazed. I'm not meant for anonymity, says. For a thief, I'm really not good at hiding.
It is kind of ironic, huh?
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, how do you survive the underground without being able to hide? I think it would have been interesting to get, like, if we could get, like, a short story of how Kelsier was before.
Well, we do have one short story about, yeah.
Oh, we do?
Oh, no, that's just after the pits, right after he's at Mistborn. The 11th Metal. It's in Arcanum Unbounded.
Well, that's him learning how to be an Elementer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's more to that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm okay with having gaps in his history. It's.
No, I feel like there's more to him, his teacher, teaching him.
Well, I mean, I guess this is the spoiler full episode. I thought he was connected to Ruin somehow, because Ruin can speak to the mentally ill,
yeah,
as well as those who are hemalurgically spiked. And I believe the Mistborn who taught Kelsier was insane.
Right, but what was his motivation for doing that?
For teaching Kelsier?
Yeah.
Ruin needed someone to topple the Lord Ruler. Ruin wanted to get free. And
Oh, right, because the Lord Ruler just kept, I suppose.
So Ruin...
Maybe that's what's bugging me in my brain.
Yep.
I kind of want to talk about Mare.
Okay.
Too, because like the first half of the book, like, there's a conversation between him and his brother Marsh about, they both loved Mar, but Mar ended up picking Kelsier, and they both wish that Mar was the one that came back from the pits and not Kelsier.
Yeah.
And like, the whole thing is wrapped up with, Kelsier missing Mar and...
Is it Mare or Mar?
I don't know.
I say Mare because, my name's M-A-R-E, right? That's the
Mare,
English
like
word
a horse.
Mare. I know, it's kind of a French influence, but anyway.
Well, all right. So Mare, there's a lot of setup about, loving Mare and doing all this for Mare. But then when Kelsier dies, he knows that Mare has gone to... Are we calling it the Beyond?
Yeah, we can call it Beyond.
But he chooses not to follow her. So, like, clearly his love is strong enough to spark a rebellion and all this stuff, but then not strong enough to go find her in the Beyond.
I need to go... I haven't reread Secret History in a minute, so I need to go back and revisit that scene. But it seemed to me more like he was so invested in, not literal children, but the people he viewed up as his children, his successors. Whether that's Vin or Spook. It's more like, his love for Mare was like, like the love for a partner, but he felt like he still loves in a different way Vin and Spook and Sazed, but he also feels an obligation to them, and so he wanted to watch over them.
I don't know. I don't get that feeling at all, but maybe I'll look out for that in my rereads of the next few books, but I don't...
Yeah.
Love is not something I normally associate with Kelsier.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it was also that, maybe it had faded over time, right? Where, like, most of the time when your partner dies, you do eventually, as part of the healing process,
Yeah.
You don't stop loving them, but it
just makes me curious about, Mare is probably not a motivating factor for Kelsier after he dies, but then in what other ways are things changed for him? Like, what kind of replaced that?
That's not in this book.
No.
So what did you see about Ruin and Preservation in this book? I don't even think I saw them called out by name. Did we?
Harmony was a couple times.
Oh man, I missed it. I was even looking for it and I missed it.
So chapter 8 epigraph, we had his name shall be Discord, yet they shall love him for it, which you read that off earlier. But so Discord showed up there. Capital D. I don't think we had Harmony show up with a capital H. However, the word harmony was brought up in one of the religions that Sazed preached. Discord too, actually. For Jaism, or Jaism, the Jah, the leader of, or the person who founded the Jah religion, was murdered by a local king for preaching discord. Now that did have a lowercase d, but it's a very strange word to use.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about, they also talked about Trelegism, where Trell was their deity. I can't remember what he said about, Trelegism.
Yeah.
But Trell is, that's one of those that you got to keep an eye out for, and for the impact in Era too, where Trelegism is a religion that is co-opted by another shard.
Yeah, so Trell was worshipped by a group known as the Nalazians, a people who lived far to the north. The Nalazians, there's no I, believed that there was beauty in darkness and that the daylight was more profane. They saw
Oh.
the stars as the 10,000 as the 1,000 eyes of the Trell watching them. The sun was the single jealous eye of Trell's brother Nault.
Which, now that I think about it, that does sound a lot like the world on White Sand, doesn't it? There's a day side and a dark side.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that it reminds me of well, I should start by saying that autonomy actually created Trellism. So it wasn't just that autonomy co-opted it, it's that she created it. I don't know why I'm saying she. I guess the current vessel is a she. Yeah. But anyways, the other thing that it reminded me of was that saying that the jealous eye was Trell's brother Nault. It just made me think of Nalthis. So I'm wondering if there's a relationship between endowment, which is the shard that's on Nalthis, if there's some kind of relationship there between endowment and autonomy.
I was thinking it reminded me a lot of the Pure Lakers on Roshar, where they worship they say they worship one god, out in public, but then when they're in private, they secretly worship another one, and that's because the one they talk about in public is jealous.
This is just mind-boggling.
Jealous of the brother, right? So,
just mind-boggling.
Yeah, lots of little teeny tiny details, but that's Stormlight. Let's talk more about what stuff there is in...
Yeah, so I think every single religion that we hear from Sazed is of importance in the Cosmere.
God, that's so much.
Yeah, I'm on, like... In world, we're told that these are religions that have been practiced on Scadrial.
Right.
But I don't know if that's true.
Well, and I wonder how much world hopping there's been.
I feel like I feel like these have been collected from worlds all across the Cosmere.
Huh.
Like that's what it feels like to me, even that I have nothing to back that up.
No, that's a good thought though.
I mean, I feel like there's still more to Sazed's people, the
Terrace?
The Terrace people that we don't know of. I mean, we're given little hints. Like there was some conclave of world bringers, which, shoot me, is just way too close to World Singers, which is the group that Hoyd or Wit kind of has set up for himself.
On Roshar. Or is it specifically on Roshar? That's where we hear about it.
I don't know. But the words are just so...
I thought that was intentional. There's not a word of Brandon on that?
I haven't gotten to all of them yet. But yeah, there's definitely more there. And I hope we find out what it is that's there, because I'm sure Brandon has it in his head. But yeah, so let me go through some of the religions that Sazed preached. We already talked about Trellism. We already talked about Jaism, Jaism.
Is it Yaism?
It's
hard.
It's founded by Ja. This isn't Roshar, so it's not a Y sound.
Oh, it could be.
So it's founded by Ja. I believe the religion is called Jaism. So the founder, Ja, was murdered by a local king for preaching discord. Jaist thought that they earned happiness proportional to their overt devotion. So they would end every sentence with
praise Yah. Praise Jah.
Praise Jah, yeah. Apparently they were not very fun people to talk to.
Praise Jah.
But one of the reasons why Kelsier had wanted to hear about this religion from Sazed was that not one Jah would accept the Lord Ruler as God, because their faith was just so strong.
Praise Jah.
I feel like that whole earned happiness proportional to their overt devotion may come up again in the Cosmere. I think we should look out for that.
Praise Jah.
Okay. Moving on. Truths of the Bennett is another religion. This one was from highly developed people who lived on the southern islands. They were seafarers and brilliant cartographers. Apparently, a lot of their maps are were being used by the Final Empire. It focused on discovery and knowledge. They believed that once all of the world was known, understood, and cataloged, men would finally find peace and harmony. So this is another point where we see the word harmony come up. It did have a lowercase h.
Well, I'm thinking about, because there's a religion in Stormlight, and I think in Tress, where it's practiced by the Iriali, where they think that they're all, one being trying to experience the world and reincarnating over and over again, and that emphasis on trying to know everything and trying to experience everything. That sounds reminiscent.
I mean, this sounds like a religion that our friend, what's that novella that we just read? The last of the 4 books of the year of Brandon. What's his name?
Aiden Nelsey will remember our plate eventually.
Nomad. Sigzil. I mean, that's what Sigzil's motivation is. He really wanted to catalog everything. He wanted to know everything. He wanted everything organized.
Well, but that read to me a little bit differently than a religious fervor, and more like he just wanted to understand things. He was a scholar.
Why couldn't that be his religion, though?
Well, certainly, I guess if that's his religion, he's feeling agnostic by the time we meet him in that book.
But not maybe by the end. Maybe.
Let's say his motivation in Sunlit Man is just keep surviving.
Which is also a religion.
Yeah.
On Scadrial. Okay. Then we have the Vala religion, which was just, I think, I don't know if this has strong Cosmere ties, because I think it was just used to highlight that for Kelsier that there was very strong devotion for the Vala, and devotion actually got stronger after the religious leaders were killed.
Yeah.
Which has a huge impact on the events of the end of Final Empire and
just survivorism being a huge religion in Era 2.
Yep. Era 2. Yeah. And then the last religion is Estalzi. This is where they think each person was born with a certain finite amount of ill luck. So when an unfortunate event happened, they thought themselves blessed. Thereafter, their lives could only get better. They mixed religion with science quite profoundly. They thought that different colors were indications of different kinds of fortune, and were particularly detailed were their descriptions of light and color. Now, here is the detail that makes me think that all of these religions are being collected throughout the Cosmere, because this sounds like Nalthis.
It sounds like the iridescent tones a little bit.
Yeah.
But they don't really believe in quantified, you've got a set amount of luck, though, do they?
I know, but this was probably collected eons before we get to the events of Warbreaker.
Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, I'm still trying to put together the timeline in my head, but I feel like these would be
especially if
worlds apart.
Well, and especially because we don't know how long ago this religion was collected, right? Because it could have been 1,000 years before the Lord Ruler's ascension, right? It's not like they just started having copper mines then, right? They were already Feruchemists.
So that's my own personal belief that these aren't just Scadrial religions.
No, that's a good thought. I didn't think about that.
And that there's more to the Terrace people already traveling the Cosmere. How they would have done that? Well, I guess through perpendicularity, I guess.
Yeah, through perpendicularities. Like the Well of Ascension or the Pits of Hatsin.
Yeah. Hatsin. Such a good word. There are a couple side characters in this first novel that we want to keep in mind for other Cosmere reads as well. So Captain Demo?
Demu.
Demu? I hate when you say it like that. Just
Captain Frenchie.
Captain Frenchie. Okay, let's do with that. So Captain Frenchie, if you remember, he was a character that he was kind of more diminutive stature. He was young. He was in the army, the rebellion army, and Kelsier was using him to defeat a
naysayer.
A naysayer.
Captain Bilge is one of the true believers in the cause, but also not. He's more loyal to Kelsier than he was
the rebellion.
Than he was to the rebellion, and so when they all went on a suicide run, he did not.
I think the important thing to note here, though, is that when Kelsier was trying to force him to kill Bilge, he resisted. He didn't want to make a killing blow. So Captain Frenchie does make an appearance in other Cosmere books, namely Stormlight Archive.
The first interlude there, right? When there's 3 foreigners going up in the Pure Lake.
I believe so. That's what
Yeah.
I'm told.
So we keep an eye out for him, or people matching his description of, a short guy sounding kind of French.
Yeah. Also, Felt. So Felt is the House Venture spy in this book.
I completely forgot about Felt.
So I had to look this up on Coppermind. But apparently he was actually part of the Last Desolation.
What?
That's what Coppermind said. I don't know. I don't know how people figured this out. Well, this is why we're casual Cosmere and not Shardcast.
And why we're making these connections for you. Wow.
Yes. This is I'm like treating the Cosmere like an academic study, trying to do research on these fantasy books.
So was Felt, wasn't he also in Dalinar's guard when he goes to visit the Night Watcher? Mm-hmm. He's in both of those?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. You would think Dalinar would maybe piece that together.
So I don't know what group that Felt is a part of.
Wow, there's so many secret societies on Roshar. That's a whole separate thing. He could be 17th Shard.
Super confused, but I guess just look out for Felt.
Yeah.
His distinguishing features are hawkish, mustached face, and he has a keen lithness.
Well, hold on. I feel like that's how they describe Hoyt half the time. With a hawkish face. But I guess Felt has a mustache.
I don't know.
Are there any
As a reminder, Reshek, aka the Lord Ruler, has been holding the Shard Ruin in a prison during Final Empire. So Reshek has never really touched Ruin's power. He's only really touched preservation.
Yes.
Which, if you didn't get that information from reading the first book, that wasn't there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
You find this out in later books. And apparently Reshek was never a vessel. He never really took on the full powers of preservation. He briefly used the power of preservation from the Well of Ascension to make some godly changes. But I guess he never took over as vessel from Leras.
The way I picture it, which might be wrong, is that it's the difference between basketball and volleyball, right? Where for Reshek, he was playing volleyball, where he touched the power for long enough to punt it, right?
I suppose.
He took up the power, and then he did something with it and got it away. But what Leras does is it's like playing basketball, where he got the power, he hold on to it, he's in possession of it. Not like he's bunting it around. He's got it.
What a strange
I'm not
way
a sports
to think
guy
about
either,
it.
But that's just the way I think's better in my mind, right?
So the power of the Shard is both a basketball and a volleyball?
Well, it's just a ball, and it's what game are you playing with it?
Okay. Sure. Moving on. Another word of Brandon that's interesting about this book. Apparently, the Lord Ruler once gave up and tried to end the Final Empire. I don't really have any more information about that.
Eh.
But interesting side note. The other thing that we should probably mention is that there are more humans on Scadrial.
Well, right, because there's the different dominances, like the northern dominance, southern dominance, you know. Oh, you're talking about the southern Scadrians?
Yeah. So I guess we should back up and provide a little bit of history context. So when Reshek took up the power of preservation, albeit briefly, he messed with the position of the planet in the solar system.
Do we want to back up a step further than that?
Sure.
So the big bad in Alendi's journal is the deepness. And it's a vague sort of threatening thing that is destroying crops, and we don't know what it is other than it is some kind of a blight upon the world that's threatening to destroy everything. So Alendi takes up the power to destroy the deepness, and the way he destroys the deepness, which is, I believe, ruin?
Mm-hmm. The deepness is ruin, the shard ruin, yep.
Yeah, we'll talk more. I mean, it becomes more clear, I think, after Here at the Ages, but he moves the planet closer to the sun, right?
Yeah, there was something that he was trying to help fix.
He's trying to burn up the mists.
He was trying to burn up the mist, so he moved the planet closer to the sun to evaporate them.
Yep.
But then it was too close, so then he moved it back, and then the whole world went into like an ice age. So then he moved it closer to the sun again. He's very bad at using this power. And was closer to the sun than what was comfortable. So then he created the volcanoes. The ash mounts to shoot ash up into the sky continuously to make the planet habitable, at least around the equator of the planet.
But then the southern sky.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, around the pole. So this book is set on the northern pole of the planet, but there are also humans on the southern pole because the equator is uninhabitable at this point. So you have two groups of humans, one at the northern pole, one at the southern pole. Final Empire takes place at the northern pole, and the people there have absolutely no clue that there are people on the southern pole.
Huh.
So that's where we are with this book, at least for the living people. Once we get into Mistborn Secret History, we will find out that Kelsier finds out that there are other people.
Did you have anything else you want to talk about with Kelsier?
Yeah, I had a couple more things, actually, I did. Another big thing with the Kelsier is just he's always smiling. Brandon made sure to kind of hammer home that point all throughout the book. And then they also, in Kelsier's death scene, he has Vin looking at Kelsier with half of his face pretty much destroyed, but the other half is still smiling. I haven't really noticed that being a thing with Kelsier post-death.
Because the Thydakar, despite being Kelsier's cognitive shadow, is not him.
So it might be a difference we might want to look out for on our rereads. Something that Kelsier tells Vin is the person who can best judge the consequences of their actions will be the most successful. I think that's an interesting philosophy for Kelsier, because I don't always think that he thinks about the consequences to his actions.
I was about to say, because that was part of his thing, was that he was so impulsive compared to other gang leaders, and like when he goes and makes his first run on Credit Shaw.
Right. And then when he gets upset, he just goes off and destroys the pits of Hassan.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't know if it was something that Brandon overlooked, or maybe this is part of the change that Brandon anticipated for Kelsier after almost losing Vin.
Well, and you can know something is true, but not
follow
necessarily
it.
Follow it. Like, I
don't know. When I read this, I thought more of Wit or Hoyd. I'm sorry, I don't like the name Hoyd. I like the name Wit better. I think of him as Wit. Okay. Another thing I think that is going to come up, which hasn't come up in Era 2, but I think might come up in Era 3, is Kelsier's relationship to Marsh. Like, we know that there's not exactly a good working relationship between them.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you have the whole mayor thing, and then you have the whole thing where Marsh thinks that Kelsier is irresponsible. We have the whole thing where Kelsier took up the rebellion and actually was successful, which, having a sibling, I know...
Your irresponsible sibling succeeded where you failed doesn't feel good? Shucks.
And, you know, if I was going to live to an immortal age, I think I might hold an immortal grudge against that.
Yeah.
And there's a line that Brandon had in there that says Kelsier clenched his jaw, a bit of his humor melting away. He could always do that to me, referring to Marsh.
Yeah.
And is that something that changes with the cognitive shadow Thydakar, or is that something that we're still going to see play out between him and Marsh? Because another spoiler alert, Marsh is still around.
Yeah.
He's still surviving off Atium.
Yeah. Certainly by the end of Era 2.
Yeah. And there are a lot of... Kelsier goes by a lot of names, which we've already mentioned. You've got Kelsier, you got Thydakar, you got, you know, Leader of the Ghostbloods, you've got Survivor, you've got Lord of the Mists, you've got Lord Kelsier, and too many names, Brandon. Yeah. Too many names. Okay, one more interesting fact, though. Breeze is actually a full-blood nobleman.
But we don't find that out until later.
Okay, well, Brandon put that in as one of his annotations.
Oh, fair enough.
For this book. So he didn't have, you know, space to fit it in this book, but it is true. Okay, so we might have gotten sidetracked once or twice in this conversation, and there is tons more to talk about with Mistborn. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Khandra, which we will talk about lots more in future episodes.
Yeah, they really make an appearance in... They play a role in Well of Ascension, but like into their society as a whole plot line in Hero of Ages.
Yeah, which I'm really excited to talk about them later. But we will talk about all of these things in more depth later on. But I think we should end this here for now.
Thank you for listening. This has been Cosmere Casual. If you have any questions, feedback, you want to chat to us, our email address is cosmerecasual@gmail.com.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.